Thank you for coming in today. We're first going to start with opening remarks from Jim Custer, Interim Executive Director at Sustainable Westchester.
Great. Well, thank you, Carmen. And I want to thank everyone here and welcome them for this, which is the first stakeholder meeting for the Opt-Out Community Distributed Generation Coalition, or Opt-Out CDG Coalition for short. I just want to acknowledge a lot of the hard work that's been done already in preparation for this meeting, and also acknowledge the broad range of unique perspectives that all of you bring here as stakeholders in this issue that we have a common vision for. Just by way of background, the perspectives that we bring from Sustainable Westchester really derive from our pretty long history in working with communities and municipalities on renewable energy issues. This is largely as a result of the intrinsic nature of our organization. We are a nonprofit member organization. Our members are the 45 members, municipalities of Westchester County. We've been in existence for nearly 10 years. We're going to celebrate our 10th year anniversary next year. One of the things we did back in 2016 to benefit our members was to launch the very first community choice aggregation program in New York State, known as Westchester Power. This was to help enable communities to increase their use of clean energy, and it used the opt-out structure for customer additions. So this is something that then positioned us to really work with communities and engage with them on a wide range of initiatives and issues related to clean energy, climate focus, climate justice, and now more than ever, disadvantaged communities that have great needs as we start facing the steeper slope of climate change and the goals that New York State wants to reach, certainly with our help. So that is the perspective we bring. We do value this initiative. Opt-Out CDG is very important, and we do believe it is really widely supported across all of our member municipalities. Unfortunately, at this point, the New York State Public Service Commission has not really shared that, is not acting on it, hence the reason for this coalition. But I want to thank everybody for joining and for being here. Really happy to be working with Mid-Hudson Energy Transition and with Jewel and with local municipalities. And with that, I'd like to turn it over for more background and really offering a better understanding of the entire issue and what our strategy is. I'm going to hand it off to Jasmine Graham, who's the Executive Director at Mid-Hudson Energy Transition, and to Leo Wiegman, who's Director of Solar Programs here at Sustainable Westchester. So again, welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here. And Jasmine, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Jim. And good morning, everyone. Welcome again to the Opt-Out Community Distributed Generation Coalition, also known as the Opt-Out CDG Coalition, stakeholder check-in. So we are absolutely thrilled to have you joining us today as we work together to advance community solar in New York State. Today, we will be discussing the significance and the implications of Opt-Out CDG, as well as developing effective advocacy strategies for its approval at the state level. This will be followed by an open discussion, so please, at any time, don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat. We have set aside plenty of time at the end of today's session to go through those questions. So please use the chat box any chance you get. So the Opt-Out CDG Coalition is made up of all of these folks that you see on the screen: environmental groups, equity-focused nonprofits, local governments, many of which are here today, and industry stakeholders. And we all share an interest in advancing clean energy access across the state. As Jim queued up, I'm Jasmine Graham, and I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Hudson Energy Transition. We are a Kingston-based community nonprofit organization, and we were recently selected by the City of Kingston in partnership with Power Market to serve as the CCA administrator for the city's CCA program, Kingston Community Energy. And what brings us here today is, the urgent crisis that we have around energy affordability and the need for opt-out CDG as a tool to alleviate that. Right now, on average, the average household spends about 3% of their household income on energy. However, low-income households in New York City, for example, have an energy burden over 8%, and 1 in 4 low-income folks has an energy burden over 17%. So this is a matter of energy insecurity, which can lead people to not use their appliances because the energy costs are too high. It leads to exorbitant utility debt and disconnection notices and shutoffs. Right now, we really see opt-out CDG as a tool to alleviate these burdens and benefit the most vulnerable folks by lowering their energy bills immediately. So let's work together to support this program to create a cleaner and more equitable future for New York. We really appreciate everyone's support on this call, and we look forward to working together to achieve our shared vision of a more sustainable and equitable energy future for all New Yorkers. So I will now hand it over to Leo, who will walk you through CCA and opt-out CDG.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next slide, please. Among the states that have deregulated energy markets, that is, those that allow competitive energy service companies to serve individual retail or residential customers, commercial customers, New York State became the 10th state to enable community choice energy aggregation in 2015. And under community energy aggregation, as many of you know, local cities, towns, and villages adopt enabling legislation to form the authority to aggregate their energy customers. That energy block is bid out, typically to secure fixed rate long-term energy contracts under favorable terms, i.e. no cost to join or no cost to leave. Opting out costs nothing, opting back in costs nothing. Since 2016, when CCA was first launched in New York, here in Westchester County, 13 different aggregations have filed for and received Public Service Commission approval to operate energy supply aggregations throughout New York, involving about 50 cities, towns, and villages at this time, from small communities to large ones, such as the city of Yonkers, for example. In total, at present, over 160 cities, towns, and villages in New York State have adopted their local community choice aggregation enabling legislation and want to proceed, but hence only 1/3 of them, the 50 I mentioned, have been able to launch up to now. Next slide, please. At the same time that New York was innovating with community choice energy aggregation, it was innovating by adapting the net metering rules around solar energy systems to allow remote net metering of local distributed generation projects, or DGG projects as the state calls them, but we would otherwise call community solar farms, became possible. For the majority of New Yorkers that cannot have a solar energy project located on their own roof or facility, community solar allows them to subscribe to the production of a larger solar project located on someone else's facility. The state calls this, as I mentioned, CDG, or community distributed generation. Here at Sustainable Westchester, we've enrolled thousands of customers, including households, small businesses, school districts, and local government meters, in over 20 megawatts of community solar projects in recent years. Each subscriber under community solar is allocated a share of that solar project based on his or her annual electric usage. The project injects clean energy into the grid, and the utility pays the project owner for that energy. And the project owner passes on a guaranteed discounted cost to the subscriber each month for that subscriber's share of that month's solar production. This I gobbled my sentence here. Sorry. So this only reaches folks who don't have solar on their own home. So the people who are not eligible for this are people who have solar on their own home, but the majority of New York residents are not able to necessarily have solar on their own. The only drawback of this opt-in clean energy guaranteed savings community solar offering is that it has been very, very difficult to reach households in disadvantaged communities who most need the guaranteed savings that Jasmine was referring to before. Next slide, please. But we have a very good solution to reach thousands of low-income households with guaranteed savings on their monthly electric bills. If we combine community choice aggregation with community solar, we get an opt-out community solar, aka Opt-Out CDG offering that will reach all the low-income households within a census block or group or neighborhood or disadvantaged communities at one time. Why would we not want to launch this kind of offering immediately? Delivering a community solar offering with guaranteed savings to all eligible residents in a disadvantaged community through a locally designed and enacted community choice program is sensible policy that could help thousands of households this year in 2023, but only if Opt-Out CDG is allowed to proceed in the immediate future. Solar developers throughout the state have developed thousands of megawatts of capacity in the project pipeline in various stages of completion. They want to earn the newly available incentives for delivering benefits to disadvantaged communities. We have 50 cities, towns, and villages, as I mentioned, with already established community choice aggregation programs that could add an opt-out CDG offering as soon as solar capacity would be available for them. We have another 110 cities, towns, and villages who've already adopted the local law, but not yet launched, that could start their CCA program with an opt-out CDG offering with guaranteed savings for their low to moderate income households, regardless of whether the energy supply market rate favors launching a traditional energy supply project, supply offering now or not. Everywhere you look in New York State, except at the Public Service Commission, New York State's own published policies promote opt-out CDG. It is called out specifically in the New York Climate Action Council scoping plan adopted in December of 2022. It's called out specifically in the New York State 10 gigawatt solar roadmap published earlier last year. But because the Public Service Commission has not yet lifted its pause order on reviewing and approving opt-out CDG as an offering within CCA, we can't really proceed. We don't really know why the Public Service Commission has not yet acted after 18 months of studying the issue, but we do know that opt-out CDG can certainly coexist with any number of other policies the Public Service Commission has deliberated. We feel very strongly that opt-out CDG is long overdue. Next slide, please. Under the CCA framework order, a municipality or its administrator files an implementation plan that offers CDG as an opt-out offering with the Public Service Commission, and the Public Service Commission would review that plan and approve it. As solar capacity or energy storage capacity becomes available, which could be a combination of solar and energy storage, it's contracted with a community choice aggregation program for subscribers, which are the eligible customers. Those eligible customers receive notification following a 60-day advanced education and outreach period. And after a 30-day opt-out period follows the notification mailing, each eligible customer that has not opted out is enrolled in the program. Customers, again, may opt out at any time during this period or after the program launches with no fee, and they opt back in at no charge. And then after verification of the solar project alerts the utility each month about the amount of energy that should be allocated to each month customer's share, and the customer's bill will show the cost of that share as well as the credit discount for that share, which yields up to 10% savings on each bill each month for each customer for the life of the project, which could be going on for 20 years. So those are the mechanics of it. Thank you. Next, I think we'll go back to Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Leo. So what is the current status of opt-out CDG and what has happened so far? Well, opt-out CDG first received limited approval in New York in 2018 by the Public Service Commission. But in 2021, they paused the program pending the development of new program operation and oversight and enforcement rules. And restarting the opt-out CDG program is currently under consideration by the PSC. But rather than restarting opt-out CDG, the PSC's, or the Public Service Commission's, most recent order actually called for the study of alternatives to opt-out CDG. They included the statewide program, very similar to Expanded Solar for All, which was approved in the northern part of the state. But part of the issue here is that PSC regulations already allow the stacking of benefits from CDG and Expanded Solar for All. As Leo touched on, these two programs can work well together, and in fact do work well together. And so, we really are intent that opt-out CDG, should not be delayed while Expanded Solar for All is being developed. Expanded Solar for All, has the potential to benefit low-income residents throughout the state, but it is a utility-led initiative that will require new billing processes to be developed, which takes time, and Opt-Out CDG is ready to go. In addition, Expanded Solar for All does nothing to encourage greater community engagement or local support for clean energy. One of the real benefits of CCA programs paired with Opt-Out CDG is the local knowledge and support that you get from your CCA administrator. So authorizing both Opt-Out CDG and Expanded Solar for All will accomplish much more to advance the state's goals than Expanded Solar for All alone. So, many stakeholders, many of you on the call, really expected that the commission would restart the program. And instead, in the January order, the future of Opt-Out CDG was actually called into question. The January order does note that Opt-Out CDG is still under consideration, so they haven't closed the door, but we are wanting and expecting action, much sooner than what we've heard. And it's notable that there are many New York State plans and reports that suggest strong support for Opt-Out CDG. The New York State's own Climate Action Council, in their scoping plan, said NYSERDA should continue to encourage the development of CCA programs where communities choose 100% renewable energy as the default supply and where participants are automatically enrolled in community solar, right? That is Opt-Out CDG. They also note that the prioritization of these efforts should be focused on disadvantaged communities. And in the state's solar roadmap, they also said that opt-out community solar offers a new element of efficiency and soft cost reductions to CDG development. Even more so, the Department of Public Service staff white paper on CCA programs released back in April 2021 recommended that the Public Service Commission adopt opt-out CDG for the integration into existing programs. So there is significant state support for opt-out CDG. And on top of that, there are all of the stakeholders that you see today, municipalities, environmental groups, businesses, and individuals that have commented on these proceedings and demonstrated their support for opt-out CDG to the Public Service Commission. The PSC at this point has recognized the benefits of opt-out CDG. And they have acknowledged that it has the potential to bring the state closer to reaching its goals while providing more access to communities. So one of the most important pieces of this is not just providing benefits to communities, but providing benefits to the communities that have been historically marginalized, that have, borne the brunt of fossil fuel pollution, and need avenues and access to the current energy system. So there are many equity considerations. And just as a bit of a primer for folks who may not know about energy justice or, the growing field of energy democracy, energy justice is all about achieving equity in both the distribution of benefits and burdens of our clean energy transition. This includes affordability of energy costs, making sure that folks have access to opportunities and technologies, and also are able to participate in the decision-making of the energy system. And some of the key goals include reducing energy burden and alleviating energy poverty and energy insecurity, while advancing energy democracy. And so this program is incredibly important in that we need to have solutions that address the numerous barriers that prevent low and moderate income households and communities of color from having solar on their own roofs. These barriers include lower homeownership rates, less access to upfront capital, and in many cases, less suitable housing infrastructure. And so these communities at this point, cannot benefit from the solar technology in the same way that higher income households can. They need an avenue for participation. this is worsened and heightened by a real utility debt crisis that LMI households have, and the high energy burden that I talked about earlier in the presentation. So in this context, right, we know that we can design an opt-out CDG proposal that can promote equity, that can ensure that disadvantaged communities and LMI households have access to the benefits of community solar. And right now, the proposal that is on the table is around serving the participants of assistance programs. So think of Home Energy Assistance Program, or HEAP. But we need to go beyond that. So we know that opt-out CDG can be offered, in a tiered way, where you're first enrolling these assistance program participants that have absolutely no other avenues to participation. This is because right now, those APPs cannot be served by a CCA unless they have a guaranteed savings product. And community solar, or opt-out CDG, is one of the few, if not the only, guaranteed savings product that we have available right now. And so, that it doesn't have to stop there, and we can prioritize disadvantaged communities as the next cohort of participants in an opt-out CDG program, right? The reality is low-income folks, people who have 2 or 3 jobs, they don't have time either, right? To be researching this, to reach out to their local entity, it becomes a really burdensome process at times to enroll in this, program that will provide you guaranteed benefits. So we don't want to create any more additional barriers. For us, opt-out CDG gets around income verification. It gets around a lot of the things that slow our ability to bring people into this transition. And so it's really important to us that we make sure that everyone has their fair share in this energy transition. And that means that we're going to have to push on the advocacy for this to make sure that, our communities are involved. So how to get involved? The Opt-Out CDG Coalition is advocating for the authorization of Opt-Out CDG by the Public Service Commission as soon as possible. As Leo mentioned, we have the megawatts, we have solar ready to go. We just need the approval by the Public Service Commission to allow folks to access these benefits and really these discounts. As I've mentioned many times before, Opt-Out CDG can provide access to clean energy for everyone. And so to support this advocacy effort, this coalition has been encouraging folks to sign on to our coalition letter to the Public Service Commission, which emphasizes the need for timely authorization of Opt-Out CDG. So signing the letter shows support for both expanding access and promoting a more equitable energy system. And importantly, supporting the Opt-Out CDG Coalition does not require any implementation of Opt-Out CDG in your community. Our objective here really is to advocate for approval at the state level to ensure that all communities who would like to adopt it in the future are able to do so. We have had individuals and organizations work with local governments to pass resolutions before your village board, your town board, or your city council in support of Opt-Out CDG. This helps to demonstrate the demand for clean energy and the need for the expansion of Opt-Out CDG. And we have sample letters and a template resolution in the tools and resources section of our coalition website that folks can use. And of course, reach out to us and we're happy to help. Well, we're also going to host a second webinar for community-based organizations to provide more information on Opt-Out CDG and how it can benefit their communities. The webinar will be an opportunity for interested organizations to learn more, get involved in the advocacy effort, and we'll likely do, a deeper dive on what is CCA, what is community solar, so that we can get everybody up to speed. And to learn more, you can visit our website, optoutcdg.org. And I just want to close by saying, I really truly believe as an individual and also as a representative of this fabulous organization, Mid-Hudson Energy Transition, we really and truly believe that if we're in this together, we can create a cleaner and a more equitable energy future for all New Yorkers. And it has to start with these easy actions. As mentioned before, there is a ton of support for this type of program, and it will provide immediate bill savings to the folks who need it the most. In some ways, it really is a no-brainer. So we hope that you will join us, and we are more than happy to answer questions. I'm going to welcome Brad Tito from Power Market and Leo back to the virtual stage to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you all for being here today. And I believe Carmen will be leading us in our Q&A. I do see a lot of questions in the chat so far, so I'll turn it over to you, Carmen, to moderate our discussion.
Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, so we will start with the first question. Isn't it part of the reason for the delay having to do with individual utilities' inability to support consolidated billing and purchase of receivables? Varies by zone. For example, Zone K only this year cleared the path to opt-in CDG.
I can take that, Carmen. So the answer is that the utilities were put on notice in 2019 that they needed to develop mechanisms for consolidating what were then the community solar opt-in customers' information onto the regular utility bill. That initial order to do that was supposed to spur action by the utilities. It was an order that, in my opinion, personal opinion, had no teeth in it per se, so the utilities dragged their feet. The situation got bad enough with errant billing by the utilities over community solar that by last fall, 2022, the utilities were mandated to come up with an implementation plan for consolidating the automation of these community solar credits onto the regular monthly bill for customers. And they then have since then to make quarterly reports to the Public Service Commission about their progress. It does appear from the latest filing of their quarterly reports, some utilities are of course ahead of others on this, but by the end of 2023, early 2024, the utilities will all have been implemented or stood up their automated billing programs for integrating the community solar and credits onto the customer's bills. And as Brad mentioned, there is the possibility and the potential for fines if they don't do it. So there's a carrot and a stick now that are in the right place. Having said that, even if we were to have magic wand wave and the Public Service Commission were to enable every opt-out CDG offering that is currently been sitting on their desk since, our offering has been sitting there for almost 2 years. Even if we were allowed to proceed now, it would take us 6 to 8 months to stand up our programs. So our programs wouldn't be operational until the end of this year if we were able to proceed next month, May 1st, let's say. And by that time, the consolidation and automation of billing will have been completed in most of the service territories. So we feel that waiting for consolidation and automation to be fully implemented and then authorizing opt-out CDG would just lose a half year to 8 to 12 months of implementation time that's required to stand up these opt-out CDG programs, because you've got to go out and talk to the solar development world to acquire the solar assets. You've got to time the assets and match those assets up against your own communities and the volume of community choice opt-out CDG customers you have. And there's a lot of administrative work that needs to happen. And we would love to use the rest of this calendar year to do that administrative work for the municipalities that want to proceed, so that when those assets receive their permission to operate, letter from the utility and flip the switch to go on in, let's say, November, December of this year, that they're fully enrolled with disadvantaged community customers and everyone benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Okay, I'm going to go into the next question. Has there been any further discussion about separating opt-out CDG and CCA into separate entities? It seems like opt-out CDG kind of achieves both aims without a fixed contract. Anyone would like to take this?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, certainly. This has been suggested. There are administrators who would like to go and do opt-out CDG only style CCAs. So just to kind of clarify, if you have a couple of different programs that CCAs can implement. One is an electricity supply program. A lot of your municipalities have 100% renewable electricity. And people in the jurisdictions are automatically enrolled into 100% renewable electricity, and they can opt out if they choose. And this opt-out CDG is an opportunity to automatically enroll them into community solar. And the question is, well, do you need to do the electricity supply, or could you do just the opt-out CDG alone? And our coalition supports the option of doing it alone. And I think that was supported in the straw proposal, that suggestion that they could be standalone programs. And in that circumstance, municipalities could adopt the CCA program. They could automatically enroll people into community solar, and they have like no risk of people spending more in those communities than they would otherwise spend. There's a situation with electricity supply costs that you lock into a fixed rate price. The utility price might be high, and it might look very attractive to be in this lower cost electricity supply. But if over the course of the 2 years, let's say the utility price dips below that fixed rate cost, it could appear that you would save money if you had been on the utility rather than on the electricity supply. So there isn't a guarantee of cost savings on the electricity supply side. Whereas on community solar, there is a guarantee. There is only savings. You will not end up paying more by being enrolled in one of these programs compared to if you weren't. You'll always pay less, and that will be an itemized line on your bill. So there's a lot of interest among municipalities for obvious reasons. They don't like the idea of there being an uncertain outcome with the electricity supply side. So there's a lot of advantages to opt-out CDG that they could implement this program. It could deliver the savings that are suggested, and it could be done in a way that there were less risk, I guess, to the community. And so we think that if opt-out CDG was an opportunity available to a lot of municipalities throughout the state, a lot of them will step up and say, yes, this is finally at a point now where we're ready to say yes to CCA, because it provides that certainty in outcome. And also, it can be done in a kind of a quick and easy way. I mean, you can sign up for one of these programs and get it off the ground with regulatory approvals, within, let's say, a couple of months, hopefully. So that's kind of the, we'll see. It's ultimately up to the Public Service Commission to determine whether these opt-out CDG programs could operate on a standalone basis, or they could be combined with electricity supply, or communities can still just do electricity supply and not do opt-out CDG. So it really gives a flexibility, and that's really what our coalition is calling for.
Thank you, Brad. And just to confirm, the opt-outs CDG straw proposal does call for us being able to offer through CCA only one product, and it could be opt-out CDG or it could be electricity supply. Okay, so we'll move to the next question. Will a copy of this presentation be sent to participants of this webinar? We can certainly make that available. Okay, wonderful. The next question. Are charts and recording going to be made accessible? Again, same question, sorry about that. Moving on to the next one. If households and businesses have already enrolled outside of CDG, how would that impact them if the town enrolls them?
I can take that. So if you already are subscribed to a community solar project on an opt-in basis, you wouldn't be an eligible household to subscribe to the opt-out, but you could choose to opt out of your existing subscription and then opt into the new offering. But you probably are, if you're already served, you're probably fine to stay with you. What we have found in our own work here in Westchester County, where we've been specifically asked by local municipalities with community solar projects to target low to moderate income enrollments and again, this was during the pandemic, so it was a little bit difficult, but in trying to do that personal outreach that we achieved rather low numbers of enrollees from the low to moderate income households, even though we worked in some cases directly with caseworkers to identify and speak with folks. And there's an understandable wariness among that community. And so we know that the opt-in method works well for, you know, certain folks, but does not work effectively at all for reaching the low to moderate income households, which is why the opt-out mechanism we think is really the only effective way to really have large scale adoption and delivery of the energy savings.
Thank you, Leo. Okay, next question. So just to make sure I understand, the solar energy stays in the community and is not sent to New York City. That's a question. Jasmine?
I can take that one. Yeah, so in this case, opt-out CDG would be enabled through your CCA, and New York City does not have a CCA. So it would enable all of the projects built in Con Ed territory, for example, you know, could go to Sustainable Westchester for their opt-out CDG program. The requirement around, you know, location of where the CDG credits go to is based on the utility zone. So Westchester and New York City are in the same or utility territory, not the same utility zone, but they're both in Con Ed territory. And so, you know, credits could go to either, but in the absence of a CCA program in New York City, the, you know, assistance program participants in disadvantaged communities in Westchester would be the first to receive opt-out CDG.
And I want to add another part of that answer just to make sure we captured the concept of solar energy going into the grid, the local grid. So when community solar project is operated, it injects energy into the local grid. And then because of that injection into the local grid, it has a monetary value that eventually translates into credits or savings in the participants of that project. So just in general, you're not actually being connected to that physical energy. You're just receiving credits or savings for participating in the project. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Are other states doing opt-out CDG successfully?
I can answer that. So no, this is like an innovation in New York, that just as New York was really the first to propose community solar, and that was a policy that was replicated in many states across the country and has been incredibly successful. In fact, the federal government now has a goal of connecting 5 million households across the country to community solar by 2025. Okay, so that's just right around the corner. We have 200,000 or so accounts in New York State that are connected to community solar. And just as our community solar program in New York State got replicated in all these states across the country, we're hoping that by standing up a successful opt-out CDG program, that policy will be adopted as well. So it's really also about demonstrating New York's leadership nationally and really in the world to put forward solutions that states and communities can implement to dramatically speed the transition to clean energy. So this is an important policy, not only for New York State, but in fact, the entire world is counting on us to do this.
Thank you, Brad.
I want to just add something to that, Brad, because, you know, New York has been the innovator in more than one way, and the community leadership or the CLCPA states that disadvantaged communities should get, you know, at least 35% with a target of 40% of benefits from the clean energy transition. That too was a New York State innovation that the federal government is now supporting through their Justice 40 initiative. You know, we are really pushing the envelope on what an equitable clean energy transition can look like. And that is a big part of the reason why we needed and why we continue to need new strategies and new innovations to meet these CLCPA requirements. I can't say it definitively, but it is, without opt-out CDG or another form to really, mass enroll the people who need it the most, I don't know that, we will meet those DAC requirements. So, New York has been the innovator on an equitable and inclusive clean energy transition.
Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, so the next question are letters to the PSC the only strategy? Any thoughts about organizing regional demonstrations of support? Should we be sending letters to New York State senators and assemblymen? Jasmine, you want to take that question?
Sure. Letter to the Public Service Commission, definitely not the only strategy, but a really great one. We use this type of strategy in the legislative arena too. A sign-on letter that we had over 200 organizations sign on to led to Governor Hochul announcing 2 million climate-friendly homes. So we know that showing the people power across the state is really valuable, and showing that not only do folks want this from every corner of New York State, but from every type of industry. This is something that, as we said before, it really helps everyone. And so while this letter is not the only strategy, it is the most important one that we have over the next few weeks. So we are going to really ramp up the advocacy and try to get 200 organizations at least to sign on to this letter by May 1st. So that is only a few weeks away. And what that means is we need you all to send this information out to everyone, all of your colleagues, all of your friends. This is, not just about clean energy, but it's about enabling CCAs. It's about enabling local action. And we would love regional demonstrations. We would love, on the ground, advocacy. And I think we should really think about what that can look like, whether it's a, distributed, advocacy day with, demonstrations in each county, or if it's all of us going to Albany, we can decide what that advocacy looks like. But the most important part is that we really do need everyone. We really need all folks to get involved and, speak to, the people that in your, sister and brother organizations, and, get those signatures in so that we can deliver. I can't wait to deliver our letter to the PSC, and they flip through the pages and they keep seeing organization after organization after organization. And they say, you know what? We actually need to make a move on this. It's not fair to continue to make communities wait. And so, that's really our big strategy here. So while we can and will have a lot more advocacy, the goal is to get so much support on this letter that they see it as a no-brainer as much as we do.
Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, do you think NYSERDA would approve use of Clean Energy Community Action Grant money for CDG outreach to LMI communities?
I can maybe answer that. I used to be program manager for the Clean Energy Communities program at NYSERDA, and I know that the action grants, depending on how much money you're talking about, if it's the $5,000 grants, those aren't tied to specific projects, although you have to describe it exactly what you want to do. And you have a lot of latitude on how those funds could be used. If it's a larger grant, then you have to put together a proposal, and it needs to be scored. And so you're subject to trying to meet all the kind of criteria and requirements that they set forth in the guidance document. But certainly the opt-out CDG is actually in the Clean Energy Communities program, in the Climate Smart Communities program as a high impact action that you can take to earn points and potentially grants through these programs. So this is another important point. I mean, we're talking about advocating that the Public Service Commission approve these programs, but they're already something that has been identified by NYSERDA and by DEC in the Climate Smart Communities program as a priority, as important, as a clear action that local governments can take to not only save money, but improve the environment and help advance the state's clean energy goals. Certainly, community campaigns around community solar are something that hundreds of communities in New York have completed under these programs. Certainly, they can be used to target low-income areas and disadvantaged communities. And some of this stuff can be done without any grant funding at all. Working closely with your CCA administrator, there shouldn't be any cost associated with implementing these programs to the municipal budget. And that's another important point.
Thank you, Brett. Okay, so another question. Our town had a community solar campaign and there are not enough spots for everyone who signed up. How can the solar industry ramp up enough if this were to pass?
Yeah, I can tackle that. So the answer is that there's a huge backlog of solar projects in general and community solar projects specifically throughout the state. For example, in National Grid territory, there's a 2,000 megawatt backlog of projects that have been registered with the utility for interconnection and filed with New York State for incentives that are not yet complete and are still in the pipeline. And this happened for a number of reasons. And these are projects that would have been, initially filed in 2019 or 2020. So that these aren't projects that would be built from 2010 or something. This happened for a number of reasons. There were material shortages in actually procuring what you need to build them, which sort of is an impact from the pandemic, the general economy slowdown. That's largely resolved now and picking up speed again. Some projects ran into relatively long permitting processes. But a very significant reason these projects stalled, particularly in 2021, 2022, was New York State stalling its incentive program, and there was and sort of revising it, and that caused a lot of developers to sort of say, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to do community solar anymore. Maybe I want to just do this and sell it off to 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 local businesses that have a big energy demand. But since the federal government adoption of the Inflation Reduction Act last summer, and since the Treasury Department's publication of the guidelines on how you access those very significant incentives of tax credits, et cetera, the solar developers have gone back to their projects and seen that the economics of those projects now look a lot better than they did before August of last summer. And so those pipelines are now being reactivated. They're restarting projects and pursuing them. And so we expect that there will be several thousand megawatts of solar that will be completed this year that's currently in the pipeline across the state. And you can find out what those pipelines look like by Googling your utility and the interconnection queue. There's a public service website that lists all of them as well. It lists the individual utilities because they've all been told to list their queues. And then you can also go to data.ny.gov, and I put this in the chat. Look under the energy and environment database, and there look for the New York Sun photovoltaic of the solar program since 2003, and you can download the data for every project in New York State, or just your county, or just your service utility, and screen it for the CDG column, and you can find out what's in the pipeline for your immediate area. But whenever we do that, we know there's thousands of megawatts that are in the pipeline that are not yet built, but that have now been accelerated by the federal incentives and the significant increase in the investment tax credit. And not to be lost on anyone is that there's a significant adder to the investment tax credit for locating your benefits in disadvantaged communities as part of the Justice 40 program that Jasmine alluded to from the federal government, regardless of what New York State does with its own incentives. So I'm very optimistic that we have a lot of capacity in the pipeline now, but the reality is, in order to meet the state's goal of the energy production that must be clean by 2030, even here in Westchester County, where we have 10,000 solar systems already installed in the last 20 years, we have to install that many again, that much capacity again in the next 6.5 years to meet the state's goal. So whatever we've done so far has been a pleasant stroll down that we have to now start running much faster at a much faster pace, 3 times faster. We have to build it 3 times faster than we have ever done before. It's possible, but it's going to require a concerted effort. And in my view, allowing every city, town, and village in New York State to decide whether it wants to offer this opt-out CDG is simply a decentralized, highly tailored, customized approach that each community can tailor to themselves and make work for themselves. Why wouldn't we do that? Thank you.
Thank you,
I'll-
Leo. Okay, thank you. One final question. When is the coalition planning to send the letter to the PSC? Jasmine?
All right, well, assuming we get our 200 signatures by May 1st, which I know that we will do and you all will help with, we will then send it to the Public Service Commission ahead of their May meeting. It's on May 16th, so we have a little bit of wiggle room if we don't get our 200 by May 1st. But really the goal would be to send it in the days ahead of that May 16th meeting. So I did drop the link in the chat again. Betta put a great comment in the chat around developing a social pack. And so when we send out the recording and these slides, we'll make sure that we send out a social pack as well that you can use to post on all of the different forms of social media. We can also include a draft email for you all in your advocacy efforts. And, just thank you all so much for being here. We are in this together, and it's so great to see so much enthusiastic support and so many questions. I will put my contact information in the chat in case folks need to reach me. And
there's one question about whether New York City can have a CCA. And does anyone want to tackle that? Brad, do you want to touch on that? Or
yeah, the answer is yes. And in fact, they could just choose a community board or some kind of smaller geography to test it out. They don't have to do the entire city, but it is something that they are studying, and there's been a council resolution that called for a study. And so we're anticipating the results of that. But there is a limited amount of solar capacity that could be built in New York City. So that might be a constraint. But I'm convinced that if the city was really behind this, they could start, putting solar panels in a lot of different places in the city and developing these kinds of projects to support an opt-out CDG program in New York City that, has, remember, all the solar farms, they have to be in the same utility territory as the CCA. So only in Con Edison territory can those projects be built to support New York City. And that's the case in all the other utility territories around the state. If you're in Central Hudson, you can only use solar farms that are in Central Hudson, the same with the rest of the state.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and we are now concluding our check-in.
Thank you so much.
thank you, everybody. Don't hesitate to stay in touch if you need anything.
And will someone save the chat?
Thank you.